Why, hello there. Welcome, my fellow randoms, to this, our 32nd episode of What's Your Random Podcast. My name is Kev Duffy, and over the course of this conversation, I'm going to explore and celebrate independent and individual creativity from the inception of an idea to the process and the practicalities of bringing an idea to life as a creative work. Welcome back to those who have joined us before, and newcomers, welcome as well. If you can, help us spread the word. That's all that I ask. And cutting to the chase, my guest today on What's Your Random Podcast is Alex Cartwright. The origins of his name are the Wheelmaker, and he has produced DayDisc, which is a lifestyle and wellness habit tracker. You could learn more about this product. I think it's really fantastic. I'm excited to get one myself to go analog in tracking my habits and wellness and whatever else I want to track on a piece of functional jewelry. And Alex put a lot of thought into this product, and I think it is kind of the culmination of his experience here on Earth, professionally, personally, spiritually, and everything else mixed into this project. It was a fun conversation to explore all of those layers, and I recommend that you check out DayDisc. You can go to daydisc.com. That's DayDisc with a C, daydisc.com, and that'll push you to the Kickstarter, which is live through the end of this month, May 2020. And after you check it out there and get an idea of what it's all about, come back and join Alex and I for our conversation. I am pretty certain you're going to enjoy it just as much as I did. Thanks, and enjoy the random. All right, recording. Well, welcome to What's Your Random Podcast. And this is a very interesting guest and an interesting area of creativity to explore today with my guest, Alex Cartwright, who is here to talk about DayDisc, which is a lifestyle and wellness habit tracker. And I believe so much more. And I'm excited to delve into all of the random with you today. Alex, welcome.
I love the random, Kevin. Thank you for the invitation to be here to talk about DayDisc. I'm super excited to see where this can go.
Yeah. So I interacted with your Kickstarter, which is live now, and we're going to push this episode out before the Kickstarter does end. So anybody listening who is interested can search DayDisc with a C. Is it daydisc.com as well?
You can also go to daydisc.com. Yep.
Yeah. And click a link to head over to their Kickstarter. And there's so much information available in the Kickstarter. And there's so much, I think, that went into the development of DayDisc. But before we get into the specifics of that, I would like to start with a simple introduction. I know of you from the Kickstarter that you're an archaeologist, and I would like to kind of know all that there is to know about you and what brought, who you were until you got to the point where you're doing this Kickstarter with DayDisc.
Okay, cool. This is quite a fun story to tell because I am sitting kind of where it all started. I don't know if your audience will know about Ley Lines.
Ley Lines?
So ley lines are in ancient kind of magic. These are these big lines that crisscross the globe, and there's some people view them as energetic lines. Some people view them as navigational kind of reference lines. And so there is these big straight lines that crisscross Europe from the old, and they're related to the old pilgrimage routes. And in England, we have several, there's one famous one. It's called the Michael Line that runs right across the country. And it goes through Glastonbury Tor, St. Michael's Mount, and the stone circle called Avebury, and through this little town that I'm sitting in called Devizes. And so Devizes is right on this magical ley line, and this landscape around here is full of archaeology. We got Stonehenge just down the road. You got burial mounds. In the daytime, I can almost see them from here. There's this huge mound. You guys in America, you have mounds, right? In Europe, we have one, and it's called Silbury Hill, and it's just down the road from here, like 8 miles. And it's this big pudding basin mound, and it like makes no sense. Nobody's figured out what it is, what it's for, when they were made. But so I grew up around here in all this kind of crazy landscape. We got like old druid guys with staffs doing the solstice rituals. It's fun to be around, on the equinox, and people take all this kind of stuff quite seriously. And this sort of West Country of the UK. And then, so I grew up around here, and then I went off to school in France. My family moved to France. My dad is a diplomat. So I grew up also in France on the border with Germany. And then I came back to the UK to study archaeology and anthropology. A long time ago now, it feels. I'm 35. And then I was at Oxford studying archaeology and anthropology, and in your first year summer break, you're supposed to go off and do some excavating. You're supposed to sign yourself up, show your initiative. So you have the world is your oyster. You go somewhere and you join a dig and you write it up. And I picked the wrong pyramid, and I went and I excavated these pyramids in Bosnia, which I don't know if you've heard of. The Bosnian Pyramid of the Sun. They're not allowed, they're too old, and they're being excavated by these cowboys, and they're totally not legit according to mainstream academic science. Anyway, so I went out and I did
not legit, meaning that they're not recognized in the current historical record, or they're
they're in the wrong place, right? Because they're in Bosnia. They're the guys that found them claims that they're like 23,000 years old, which makes them like way older than the Egyptian pyramids. They're way bigger because they're actually kind of pointy hills. Anyway, so I went out there. I was really curious to see what they were finding out there. Anyway, it turned out to be mainly kind of a bit of both. It was kind of a bit of fabrication. It was a bit kind of cowboy archaeology. They had like guys with like backhoes trying to like see what they were going to find. Anyway, so I came back and I was writing up my thing, and my tutor came and said to me, "Look, this is not legit enough. You kind of because this Slovenian camera crew had come and poked the camera in my face, and I said, "Oh yeah, I'm an archaeologist from Oxford." And then the leader
they
of
seized
the team
that opportunity, right?
I twisted it, and I was now legitimizing the whole thing. And this got right back up to Oxford in like a week, right? And so when I got back, like 3 weeks later, my personal tutor comes and has a little sit-down meeting with me. He goes, "Alexander, do you know that you're in the center pages of Science magazine this month?" I was like, "Really?" It shows me, yeah. And it was a huge debate about mainstream archaeology versus like the what they call it the lunatic fringe. And I was the dumb guy that had gone off and touched off this firestorm by saying, to the camera, I'm an Oxford archaeologist. And these pyramids seem really interesting. And so Oxford and I had to part ways at that point because they didn't want me anymore because I'd tarnished the reputation of the institution. So I've been
you were a lunatic and you were on the fringe, apparently.
Exactly.
In their eyes.
And that's where I've kind of stayed ever since. So I didn't know what I was going to do, but I found archaeology and anthropology super interesting, which was the main thing. And I never thought I would end up making things. I used to play with Lego as a kid, but not like making products for the people. So that's learning to make, learning to set up business, you've done it? Have you done it?
I've tried, but it's not easy.
No, it's so much. And it's and you are off the rails because you're just making the rails yourself, but you're off peak.
Yeah. And I mean, you've had a lot of success. You're already successfully funded. You hit your goals. You far exceeded your goals. So I imagine there's a lot of, I don't know if you intended or planned to exceed your goals by the amount that you are exceeding them, or if that was part of the plan?
We were very optimistic that if we set the goal reasonable and achievable, that we could blitz past it. But yeah, what's happened has been really great. Japan. How does Japan find this? I've had mails, people, so many customers from there. I think they have eyes on, the Kickstarter scene, and they cherry pick things that they like. I don't know who else from Kickstarter is having big success in Japan, but that was wild.
Wow, interesting. It's a sizable
and we were
portion?
obviously, I don't speak any Japanese. We weren't able to market ourselves in any way to them, so it just happened.
It was meant to be. It was written, I guess, that way. So
I think it's because maybe the DayDisc looks a little bit like a shuriken.
Yes, it does.
Like a ninja star.
Yeah,
it's a bit dull. You'd like knock someone out with it rather than get any flesh wound.
Rather than impale them in the head and causing them a hemorrhage. So going back a little bit, I'm curious what started your interest in archaeology, and specifically what cultures or societies you were interested in, and what drove that initial passion?
I think because I'm a Western European kid, I got a heavy dose of the Greek myths and legends when I was a kid. I had it first here in England when I was at school here, and then I had it again in France when I was at school in France. So they didn't really let up on how exciting and fun all the Greek myths and legends and the gods and the goddesses. And my mum is obsessed with the Olympics. So she's taken us to ancient Greece. We've run on the athletic track. I've got 4 brothers, and we did the sprint, and she wanted us to do it naked. And we're like, Mum, like chill as a tourist. I know it's a cool idea, Mum. I was the oldest, so I was like trying to get on her wavelength. I was like, kind of see where you're coming from, but no. And so we did Delphi. This was in 2000 when Athens had the Olympics. So that was her excuse. She was like, I'm going to take the boys and we're going to see all the archaeology. But that was obviously quite late. But I already, and from the Greeks, I went to the Egyptians and the pyramids and like the why and the what the fuck and then like what's really going on. And I was learning more and more languages as I was going along, and everything was interesting. And archaeology and anthropology is really it's the mother. It's the kind of umbrella subject. Everything to do with man alive, anthropology, man dead, archaeology. And then if you read science fiction as well, you have you got it all covered, the future also.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I was looking up just random rabbit holes that your project led me on to look into why somebody might use a C or a K when writing disc, because both seem to be interchangeable. And then I discovered that disc, the word, came from basically the Olympics, as far as I could tell through my research. So there's all these points of connectivity between you and your studies and your interests.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, the longer I live and the more things you do, the more the synergy and the serendipity and the connectivity is nuts. So my name, Cartwright, means wheel maker. Right? That's the old guy in the village. You have the smith, the thatcher, and the Cartwright, and the guy makes wheels. So, and I've just realized that quite recently, the last few months, that I've made this little wheel, right? And then I was looking into the Eastern mysticism of it and stuff. And so chakra means wheel. That's what it means in Sanskrit. And so all these things are coming together. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
I'll tell you some more cool little things that really got me hooked onto how profound archaeology could be. There is a guy buried 20 miles away, and he was buried. He's a Neolithic dude. He was buried with his gear, and one of the things he had was his copper staff, and it's not got a point on either end, and it doesn't got a handle, and it's not got any inscriptions. It's just this copper staff, and nobody could work out for ages what it was. And then the story goes, some archaeologist who's involved in this is talking about it at some dinner party with some friends of his wife's friend who's like a mathematician, and goes, oh, well, it's probably like a meter stick. And then and so they go back and they measure it exactly, and then they go and they check with like Stonehenge, and like, oh my gosh, Stonehenge is in units of this thing.
Of this stick.
The meter stick, right? The Neolithic yard. And then it gets better, because then they have all these techniques. So they go and they're investigating this skeleton, this guy, who is he? What do we know about him? Like, blah, blah, blah. And you can do isotopic analysis of people's teeth. So as you age, the water that you drink is going to deposit different isotopes in the dentine of your teeth. And later, 1,000 archaeologists can come and like do all kinds of analyses, and they figure out what kind of isotopic signature your teeth have from when you're growing up. So when you're forming your second teeth. Anyway, so it turned out that this guy had grown up in some valley in the Alps. They were like checking the water. Where's the water? Like some valley in the Alps. So 6,500 years ago, some kid is born in some valley in the Alps who grows up to go and be like the architect of Stonehenge and get, how, that's the kind of history that I was really hooked on.
Yeah. And I mean, it's discovery of past tales and past stories and trying to connect us to that past, right? Is there any
and it's so easy. We get told, it's so easy to fall into the trap that they were kind of, that we're so much smarter. And they were doing so much more with so much less, that's the revelation. It's like, oh, wow, these guys had so many life hacks that we can't ever know, because they managed to build the pyramids and we can't.
Yeah, and we can't even conceive of how they were built at that time, right?
Yeah.
I think that's a perfect point to introduce DayDisc to listeners and tell them exactly what it is, so that we could, carry on further to discuss how it came into being.
Thanks. Yeah. So DayDisc is a pendant that has 12 magnetic grooves which receive a magnetic tracking orb and a little dial on the face. So it's a bit of a clumsy description, but it works as an activity tracker. So the challenge with DayDisc is 12 times a day to take a little mindful moment to do something for yourself, for your own self-development, which you will then track by just clicking the little ball around from groove to groove. So it's mechanical, it's analog, there's no data, no battery, no screen, no beep, beep, no EMF, no nothing. It's very sort of discreet, but it's actually quite effective, and it's very immediate, it's very tactile, and 12 is just such a great number, and it's so easy to think of things that you could do 12 reps of in a day that would really, I don't know, I'll challenge you off the top of your head. Maybe you've already had a thought about it.
Well, when I first saw your Kickstarter and saw DayDisc, I immediately know how I myself would employ it. And I guess that's part of the challenge and part of the thing that's so compelling about it as a device for individuals, is that you could ascribe to it whatever you want. You could track whatever action, track whatever activity you want. And for me, I find that I don't give myself enough credit for when I do things. So I was thinking of simply tracking and giving myself credit. And, in your Kickstarter literature, you talk about the dopamine hit you get when you acknowledge yourself and what you're doing and the time that you're spending on yourself and however you might be spending that time. So I was thinking that, I could just, acknowledge that I did something that takes energy and time, and that would probably be powerful for me. And nothing specific.
I think it would be powerful. It's a super smart thing to do. Exactly. Yes, to validate yourself and to just be mindful of it. Yeah. And hitting 12 is it's a great good night feeling. I've been wearing mine now for not this one, but the prototype, so the original, the archetype, for 3 years. And a day when you hit 12 is very much better than a day when you don't. And you think, I just fell short. I could have, should have. And on a day when you do, you think, well, nice, good.
And how do you rebound from the days when you don't personally?
It's kind of simple, kind of subtle, very personal, and just basic psychology. You think, I had a goal. I have another opportunity to hit it the next day. Maybe the reason I use my DayDisc to do little reps of exercises. So I got a pull-up bar over here. I can do like 30 push-ups or like pull-ups or little sets or squats or something. And, if I've had a really busy day doing other things, and I'll know, look, I just didn't find the time. I couldn't make the time, but it's telling me, look, you only got to 9 today. Wow, you've had a really busy day. Oh, could you have made the time? Should I have made the time? Or was that just written off as like a really busy day?
Right.
You do kind of get to track. And also sometimes, you'll get to 9 and think, well, I can do 3 sets before bed. It's fine.
And then you rep it out right before you hit.
And Chloe, my fiance, she uses it to do little meditations, and she'll do the same. If she's like hasn't quite made it before we go to bed, she'll just sit and do like an extra 10 minutes or an extra 15 minutes or something, and that counts for the 3 clicks.
Yeah, I love that. And I like that checking in with yourself at the end of the day to see how far along you got. If you didn't hit your goal, you could think about why, maybe give yourself credit for having done other things that you weren't tracking on DayDisc. And basically have a mindful moment about how you spent your day. So it's another way to check in, even if you didn't hit your goal. And then the other thing I love about it is, and the concept of it is that it's DayDisc, right? So tomorrow is another day. You're going to start fresh and new, clean slate. The orbs are back where they start from. And you're tracking for another 24-hour period. And
it is cool. It does have this auto reset feature, and it only works if you made it to the end. I was going to say that it is a DayDisc, and I've been discovering things about it, about how it can work as I go along. It hadn't occurred to me that you could use stacking the orbs. Oh, you can't see. Stacking the orbs. You can do a longer count, like the Maya calendar kind of system. So you can do one set of, count one day and then move one orb to the second. And so with stacking the orbs, you could actually do a longer count. It's going to be in multiples of 12. So you're going to have like a 36-day count. I'm really excited to see how all these people who bought them on Kickstarter are gonna figure out their own ways to use it. I really am excited. Chloe had the idea that you could use a mind, body, spirit ball, and so simultaneously you could be tracking activities. You could get your achievements in these 3 different domains.
Can you describe? I'm not familiar with it. If you could describe it a little bit more.
Sorry.
I'm not familiar with the thing that you're talking about. Can you describe it a little bit more?
This mind, body, spirit idea.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it was her idea that people might want to break down their daily activities, the things that they do in the day, into things in the mind domain, like reading a something, an article, or taking a quarter of an hour in a book or something, or the body domain, some stretches or some calisthenics, and then the spirit domain where they might want to pray or they might want to meditate a little bit. And for really advanced users with multiple balls, they could hit like 36 activities in a day. And we're excited. I don't know. I think some people do get very obsessive. Well, I don't mean that in a negative way. People get very systematic, and people engage with the combinatorics and the permutations of the system. People who like quantified self and data, for example, might like to see the abstract data patterns that they just can kind of embody with these multiple balls. It's exciting. I just use mine the simple way: one ball, one.
Okay. Yeah, you're saying you use the simple tracking of one ball and just 12 activities in a day.
Up to everybody else to figure out how they want to use it.
Yeah. And so how did I don't know if you mind me calling it a product, or what would you refer to it as?
Yeah, at this point, it's definitely a product.
Yeah. So what was the product development like for you? I mean, I know that it has some relationship to clocks. maybe specifically, or clock making, maybe
So
specifically
that's right. I don't know.
Yugoslavian
I don't know. Are
clock
your
making?
listeners viewers? Are they the same? Your listeners going to view this?
Possibly, but it's best to describe since it's podcast. A lot of people listen on Spotify and whatnot as well.
About 4 years ago, I lived in ex-Yugoslavia in Croatia, and they have a lot of post-socialist, what should we call it? Post-industrial urban decay. There's a lot of, I guess in America you have like the Rust Belt. There's a lot of Rust Belty kind of stuff in ex-Yugoslavia. And I loved the urban archaeology kind of thing, discovering like abandoned factories, climbing around, seeing like all these machines left behind and stuff, and people's homes too, because they had a war as well.
Right.
So some abandoned property. And anyway, I ended up finding a really run-down, broken-down home that apparently belonged to a clockmaker, and all of his tools were, or maybe her tools were left behind. And in this box of tools were loads of cool things, most of which I didn't recognize. And I got really excited about two of them. And both of them ended up being critical to the development of the DayDisc idea. And the first one was this little, I'm going to show you and I'm going to try to describe it. It almost looks small, like about an inch wide, an inch and a half wide. It's a ring with 12 different, what they look like screwdriver heads on it, and different size, and the label
right.
12.
It looks like almost for a cyclist, one of the tools that they carry around that has multiple.
Right. It's a little watchmaker's little mini multi-tool, and but the heads are square, right? And it turns out it's not actually. And it took about 3 years to figure out what this particular one is for. And this one is not for driving little screws. Turns out that each of these protrusions fits inside the hollow key of a clock from the olden days when clocks were wound.
For winding.
And so each clock would have a key the appropriate size. And for checking which size key, the key itself was hollow, and this would fit in the end of the key.
Ah, I see.
So this is some kind of key gauge. And when I found out, I got really, we were talking about the words and serendipity, a key gauge. It's like a key gauge. Like, that's a cool idea, a key gauge. And so that folded into like, what is DayDisc now? Because I was wearing this around my neck because I thought it was a cool little thing. And then one day when I was playing with these little magnets, they just jumped on, got stuck, and could play with this for hours and hours and hours, right? And this was cool. And then I realized, oh gosh, look, I can count. Like this magnet can move from one of these little key gauges to the next, and I can track something. And the idea was born that way. So so you're talking about product development. So this thing is made of all iron. So the magnet sticks anywhere. And one of the processes in developing the DayDisc was to move away from having an all-iron object towards brass and steel, so that we could have the magnetism localized and have a really specific hand feel to the way the ball like jumps around and the way it nestles in, the way it clicks and fits. But that's not actually what happened first, because I wanted to make it out of stone. That was the kind of archaeologist sort of coming back a bit old school, Neolithic kind of. I had this vision of a jade DayDisc made of jade.
Oh, wow.
And so actually, I found some guys in Indonesia, and we had to do a contest, see who could make the shape that I had in mind the best out of jade. And we found this guy who actually did a really, really amazing job, and sent back this jade DayDisc. So I've got it here somewhere. There. But it turned out the breakage rate was really, 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 really high, and these guys were getting through so much jade to crank out one beautiful, beautiful DayDisc. So we thought this is not going to be a very efficient way to make them. So we went to machined metal.
Right.
And then the options started opening up because you have, I taught myself CAD, so 3D modeling. I sort of taught myself to speak engineerese and to talk about like tolerances and fits. And so that was all really exciting. That was phase 2 of the project. That was, instead of like sending a drawing over to Indonesia, this was designing the object to very specific tolerances and dimensions.
Yeah. And was the concept you always had 12 prongs and 12
well,
cavities?
12 is such a cool number because it's the ancients used base 60 maths. Did you know this? Right. So, and base 60 is basically base 12 multiplied up by 5. And the reason 12 is cool is because it has the most, what are they called? Whole fractions. You can subdivide it by, you can do half of 12, you can do a quarter of 12, you can do a third of 12. So for somebody who's doing sets of something, reps during the day, 12 is a really good way to break down the number.
Mm.
It was never meant to be 12 hours in the day. There was no specific connection to the 12 hours. It was rather 12 is an achievable number, right?
But I guess based on the same math from the same origins, I would presume. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And what period used this base 60 math, if you can talk to that a little bit more?
This was the Babylonians, the Sumerians. This is what we call, or the mainstream archaeology. I don't know how open you are to like the lunatic fringe of the archaeology.
I'm open to everything. It's not an area that I have any sort of expertise or deep knowledge. So yeah, please, share as much as you can. 12
turns up everywhere. Like you have the 12 tribes of Israel, which it's a really, you have the 12 signs of the zodiac. So this idea of chopping up a circle into 12 segments is possibly what led to the development of this base 60 math. So 12, you get 360 degrees in the circle. And the ancients had this cool year where their year had to be 360 days because the math said so. And then because they had these 5 spare days, they were like, oh, well, we have to have a big festival. We just count it as like, it doesn't count. It's just a big festival time.
Escape time for 5 days.
Loads of civilizations in the past, like from back like 4,000 or 5,000, 6,000 years ago, they used to this is how they used to handle their calendar.
Yeah, not quite as seriously, I think, as we do.
I think more as a guide.
Seriously.
Our calendar has been completely fucked about by like the Romans. They got like the Gregorian, Julian calendar. Like, we were joking about this with a friend the other day. In our language, in English, we have, how does it go? September, which comes from the root 7, right? October comes from the root 8. November 9. December. The December comes from the root 10, like a decade, right? Decade.
I never realized that, yeah.
And it's the 12th month. So everything is off by 2. And this has been done, I can't remember the date off the top of my head, but loads of like white guys in Rome or like Vatican sat down like 600 years ago and go, oh yeah, we have to shift the calendar. We'll name this one after this emperor, this one after that emperor. Nobody will notice. It'll be fine. And that's why we have all this crazy stuff like Easter, like moving through the calendar and stuff, because we're not pegged to the cosmic calendar anymore and the solstices and the equinox. We have these kinds of Roman impositions where things are named after July, Julius Caesar, August Caesar. I often think also about the BC AD.
Mm.
A friend of mine my brother went also to Afghanistan in the army, and he came back and he reminded us, it's like 1479 in Afghanistan, right? In the Islamic world, they don't have like AD, BC. They're in a different calendar. They literally are, you know. And so I went, yeah, and I looked at these schools, and when they're founded, when they're opened in Afghanistan, they're all like, oh, founded in like 1468. And I'm like, that's last year. and so we were, yeah. So what would we do? How would you resynchronize the calendars? And it has to be aliens, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then everybody can agree before aliens and after aliens. Everybody, I think, could get on like this.
That's one thing we could all agree on, right? That's one thing that'll bring us together. It's interesting. Japan also still maintains their calendar based on the emperor. So
yeah, how does it work according to how old the emperor is? We're in
how long
year
that
of which emperor?
The year of that emperor's reign. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And sometimes I spent some time in Japan, and people would ask me what year I was born. And specifically when it comes to your age and your birth year, oftentimes they use that emperor-based system of counting years. So people say, oh, I was born in Showa, or I was born in Heisei, and they recently changed again to, I think it's Reiwa. I think Reiwa is the new one, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah.
How long were you there?
On and off, a total of 2 years. Yeah, I taught English, and I studied during university as well.
Oh, cool. Maybe, I mean, do you have any idea why the Japanese are into the DayDisc? Why is it hitting? Why are we getting this interesting?
I don't know. I could just speculate that they like the analog and they like machined jewelry. I've seen, machined jewelry be popular there.
Yeah.
And just the functionality and simplicity, but meaning in something very simple and natural. So yeah, all of those points kind of, the DayDisc hits. And I think those are points that resonate with Japanese culture. Yeah, that's fascinating. But was it one person found it in Japan and they sent it to a friend, and then you had a just network explosion?
I don't have fine resolution metrics. I can't. I'm not very savvy at the back end. I haven't managed to figure out exactly how that's working yet.
So how many iterations was it? Through making it manually, rendering it into 3D in a computer program, and then having it actually produced at some point? Like, what was that whole process like? Because I think product development
it was about 18 months from a drawing that I shared with a person who I hoped would make it. This was the Indonesian connection, to a metal prototype that worked. And along the way, lots of fun things happened. Like, we found that we couldn't do the dial, which is important for marking the clockwise progress. The stone DayDiscs could take the shape very nicely, and you could fit the magnets very nicely, but engraving the dial was very difficult. And so we went with laser. That was fun. So it turns out that the laser will blast the stone and it will vitrify the pattern onto the. And so that was amazing, taking these little things from like handcrafted, the old style way, and then flying them across, right around the world, and then having them like lasered, actually in some guy's garage here. The laser works quite well. So that was another stage in the process. We tried plating them. So we've experimented with plating different metals on them. That was another fun. I had to learn lots of metallurgy, so it turns out you can't use every kind of steel. So you have to use 316 austenitic surgical steel, because that one has got the crystals arranged in some special way that cancels out the intrinsic magnetic properties of the iron in the steel. So you can't just choose any old, you can't go like, oh yeah, just do me like a shiny silver one, it'll be fine. No. It has to be like.
How do you ascertain that? How do you figure that out on your own? I mean, this is fascinating that you're able to pull this all together.
Wikipedia. The internet has the answers to every question. You can learn everything. When I needed to do the CAD modeling and I had no idea, I was like, YouTube tutorial, And you're only ever hours away from figuring out where you should, how to figure out, figuring out how to figure out your solution on the internet.
Yeah, yeah. Asking a question to figure out what question you actually need to ask, that sort of thing.
Yeah, and it's really frustrating when you don't know what your keyword term is because you're not a technical expert and you haven't learned that, oh yeah, you're talking about this. You're like, yeah, but I didn't know it was called that. Yeah.
And were there any other iterations along the way?
Other iterations?
Or refinement or deviation from your original design and concept?
No, the answer is actually the design is in my head was originally very pure. It's 2 ellipses, and the proportions are determined by the size of the ball, which is 5 millimeters. And I wanted to incorporate the Fibonacci numbers and the golden ratio.
The golden ratio.
So the other proportions are derived from that 5 millimeters. So that keeps everything very simple. I didn't have to make very many choices at this point because the geometry was suggesting itself. And then the cross section one way is an ellipse, the cross section the other way is an ellipse. And there you go. The design was kind of so simple that it didn't need any tweaking, actually.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you didn't have to make those design choices, maybe, but you did have to make the choice to actually go through with it. So what was that process like for you when you had this clockmaker's tool in your hand and you were playing with the magnet and started to conceive of this idea? People have ideas every day, but they don't always act on them. So what made you act on this idea, and what was the process it's a huge time commitment to spend all that time Googling questions to find what question you need to ask to find the right answer and all of that. So yeah, what was the process of actually taking this on like?
No, you're right. That's that is the good question. The reason I stuck with the process was because the DayDisc was working on me. It was just working on me. It's so simple. I would wake up, I would click, 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 do a few sets, and then later the kettle is boiling, I'm making a cup of tea, click, click a couple of sets. And it was just working. And actually I got stronger really fast and I got into the habit. It's habit. It's the difference between just doing it every now and then and getting into the habit. And it was so effective. I thought, damn, this should be, there's something going on here. There's something about the clickiness. There's something about the magnetism. There's something about the fact that it weighs on your sternum. It kind of, as I walk around, I feel it. It's not too obtrusive. It doesn't beep. It doesn't buzz, but it's always there. It's waterproof. It's fireproof. There's something that works. And so in the spirit of sharing, I wanted other people to have a go.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm a person, I have never clicked with any digital, you've seen me at the beginning with Zoom. I'm not a very digital person. I wouldn't use a Fitbit. I wouldn't use any of these app-based input your sleep rhythms and how many times did you breathe today kind of things. So it wouldn't work for me. So I suspect that there's other people like me out there. And then I started finding out that there are, and it's called digital fatigue, and that everybody is really stressed out by all their apps and by updates and this data that gets sold, bought, pirated, lost, and because it was just so fun, Kevin, along the way, it was the first time that I had an idea good enough to push it all the way.
Yeah.
So I didn't hesitate. Actually, all along the way, people's feedback about the concept was very good, and when they started to be able to get their hands on the actual object, the weight of it, the feel of it, and people could really intuit how it feels, how it clicks, how it works. I just got more and more encouraged as I went along.
Yeah. And I wonder, you talk about it as a sort of, what's the word here? I'm going to look at my notes for a second. A ritual object is one of the terms that you use in your Kickstarter. And I was thinking about like objects and technology and the narrative that you have about technology and digital fatigue. And yet, as humans, I'm still gravitating towards your product as a ritual object that I could project some part of myself on and then look at that reflection, right? And I wonder, it's not even a question, but just speaking loosely about our connection to objects and how this object fits into all of the other objects we have, from an archaeological and anthropological perspective. How do you view objects generally? And then how do you view the object that you've created?
Okay, I'm glad you asked. My problem with we've objectified a lot of crap, and we've made it out of crappy materials, and we've made it with crappy components because it's all designed to fail. And so DayDisc is very much a reaction against planned obsolescence. I'm totally not cool. None of us should be cool with this idea that we're being sold things which have basically laughable working lifespans. It's criminal. I mean, that's really the ecological problem is trash.
Right.
The objects which shouldn't be trash, but like I always laugh about the Voyager probes. Voyager 1 and 2. They're like sent out in like 1976 and 1977 or something, and they're still working, and they're like billions of kilometers away. And you wouldn't find a car or a fridge or a washing machine or anything that still works without ever being serviced. Since so we can do it, but we don't. And it's all about design choices and material choices, and then just like attitude to these objects and whether they're here to last, whether we're going to love them or just we're going to use them, whether they're supposed to have aesthetic aspects as well as their utilitarian aspects. And yeah. So planned permanence is this idea. I don't think it's mine, but the word is not very common on the internet. The planned permanence. We should plan for objects that last forever, where we can. That's what the pyramids are all about. That's what people who are buried with their grave goods expect to be buried forever with their grave goods. And so DayDisc is definitely one of these sort of supposed to be a forever object. And then to come to the ritual aspect of it, it's kind of funny to me because there's an in-joke, which is that in the archaeological community, ritual objects is what they call things when they don't know what they are. And so this cool thing comes out of the ground and they're like, oh wow, oh, it's mysterious. What does it do? And I'm like, must be a ritual object. And so so all around the museums of the world, all of the most beautiful little things, all of the most like mysterious little things, the little labels, like ritual objects. And so this was a joke with myself. I wanted DayDiscs to be found in like thousands of years, and for the archaeologists of the future to be like, well, we don't really know what it was for. This is a ritual object. And it is a ritual object. As you say, you can invest yourself personally. You do make a daily ritual. I went and I looked up the technical definitions of ritual, and it's related to rites, which are these actions performed ceremonially through time at specific with meaning and conscious dedication. And so the ritual objects. What else are there? Do we have any other ritual objects these days? Can you think of other?
Well, I wonder if there's not a cross section of ritual and habit, and some part where they overlap, or does ritual have a nuance that is more spiritual in nature? I guess what is the definition that you happened upon for ritual?
Well, I'm afraid once you've done a bit of anthropology, you can't really settle on any definitions because so you're like, oh, somebody else has a different definition and somebody else has a different definition. So yeah, I'm very open-minded. It can mean, for example, Chloe is a bit, doesn't really like the word ritual because for her it has connotations of darker kind of ritual. That's what it makes her think. And I think of like my dad's ritual, drinking tea, reading the paper. That's also ritual.
Yeah, I was thinking drinking coffee every morning, which is
yeah, right.
part ritual for me.
Yeah, I know that like having a smoke every now and then, that's an important ritual for me. So what's a ritual? Yeah, I think it's personal. It's very subjective. The spiritual people or the people who feel that they're able to think and sort of articulate their own spirituality will invest, I think, their objects and their lifestyles with more ritual aspects. Like burning incense, for example, to clear the room. You know, is that just like making the mood nice, or is that a ritual? I think this is for everybody to find their balance.
Mm. Yeah, and that leads to another question I have written here, which is, what is the mindset that somebody has to have to most effectively use DayDisc? Because simply having an object doesn't do the work for you. You could have a typewriter, it's not going to write a book. You could have any object and it's not going to use itself. You have to employ the device to do what it's capable of. So, what is the mindset somebody should be in when they use DayDisc?
So a lot of us have already heard people say things like, "Oh, you should drink more water," or a lot of us have already been kind of told what are defective, where maybe our habits are defective. People, oh well, you should work, you should move more, or you should get out more, or you should put your phone down more. We've heard it from our partners, or from our consciences, or from and the trend now is with atomic habits, tiny habits. People understand this notion of chunking time. People have been prepared to like set smart, achievable goals. So I think the attitude that people should be. This is really for people who have probably tried some kind of fitness tracking, activity tracking device, and couldn't settle into the digital way, or where the app didn't sit right, or the aesthetics of the app, or the ergonomics of the app, or the data wasn't accurate enough, or the data was presenting irrelevant. Who really needs to know their heart rate? It's not everybody, but it's one of the data streams that comes through these things.
Yeah, I was just thinking all of those apps and devices are meant to be highly personalized to show your the fingerprint of your health status, but at the same time, most of the information that it gives back to us is not useful for the majority of us. So isn't it better to have something that tracks something that you decide that's highly personal to you, like whatever you project onto DayDisc as you're tracking your achievement and your own definition of achievement?
No, you're right. And each DayDisc comes with like what we call the commitment card. And as you open the DayDisc, the card invites you to make a commitment to yourself. And it's just that. It's only you to yourself. And the DayDisc is the kind of the tracker, the coach, the count that mediates your investment in yourself. So if you're ready, if you're feeling, hey, I want to lose weight. Hey, I want to get stronger. Hey, I need to read more. Or oh, I really need to start writing down more of my thoughts. Or oh, I should really take 12 times 5 minutes a day to just chill out. And that's something that we've all felt. then
Right.
DayDisc is a really clicky, kind of addictive, intuitive way to make that kind of habit stick.
Yeah. And the Kickstarter also mentions, the psychological aspects of it, and you alluded to habit forming. But there were a couple of things listed there, and I wasn't familiar with them all. So can you speak more to our psychology, the dopamine hits we get when we achieve something, and any other way that this simple analog device is designed to help us, use our own psychology to make ourselves better?
Right. This was something that I learned about when I was figuring out how to describe the DayDisc and how it works to the Kickstarter audience, because it was something which was whoops, where have you gone? Oh no.
I'm still here.
I'm still here. Yeah, I lost you. Because I was coming at this more from the Eastern mystical side of things. So the karma and the dharma, the intentionality, the forming prana flows, which is what I had been learning a lot about for the last few years. But then I came back to the kind of the Western perspective to find that a lot of work had been done about this behavior modification and these habit loops, the one that you mentioned, which is a really simple little feedback loop. It goes trigger, behavior, reward, and it's been used on rats, medical students, undergraduates, and it just works. It's a universal thing. If you have a dopamine system in your brain, and we all do, then this will work. So the trigger is a cue. And in this case, the cue is the mass of the DayDisc, the fact that you're going to feel it banging on your chest. Well, banging is a bit strong, but you'll feel it there.
Presence,
it'll
the presence
your
of it.
It's in your peripheral vision, and you're triggered. So that's your cue. I could make 5 minutes to do something now. And so you do. DayDisc does, it works. You take 5 minutes, and you'll take 5 minutes to do. Or I mean, I can do 30 push-ups in, what is it, like just under a minute, and that's enough. And there you go. And then the reward is the little click as you move the magnet around, and it does click, and it does feel good. And then you just repeat this. And then on the higher order, you have the dopamine click, which we talked about earlier at the end of the day, the completion. And I'm not actually sure technically that's a dopamine circuit, or if that's a slower brain mechanism. But certainly you get another feel-good pulse at the end of the day when you've completed the circuit. And this is really what we're hacking. I mean, I don't like this word hacking, but it's what it's what these systems are using to achieve their effect, right? It's some biology.
Yeah. And I listened to a New York Times podcast by Ezra Klein recently, and a guest he had on was talking about how even anxiety is somehow hijacking this loop that you discussed with the, what was it? Trigger,
behavior, reward.
Trigger, behavior, reward. And that, anxious people are somehow rewarding themselves for being anxious and creating this loop. And it seems counterintuitive, but just based on our evolutionary biology, that there is room and reason to be anxious in the wild, but we're not in the wild anymore. But we reward ourselves for being kind of tense and on alert, let's say. And understanding this cycle and this loop is kind of the first step towards breaking it. And I think one way to break it is by shifting the emphasis of your attention to something like DayDisc. So in that way, it also resonated with me when I saw the Kickstarter, because I had just listened to that podcast and I was like, oh wow, this is something else that I could project my attention on, other than what's making me anxious.
Yeah, and it's you talk about when we were in the wild and the reasons to be anxious in the wild, and so the evolutionary history in anthropology, as we look at the evolutionary history of mankind, it's crazy to realize that the environment used to be the wild. Now the environment is other people. And that's basically what the environment is made of now. It's not, never mind like the lampposts and the streets no, mainly the things that you need to care about in the environment is just the other people.
Right. And or not even physical people, but the projection of their avatars on the internet.
All these other minds. It used to be like, is the river gonna be like high or low? Is the tiger gonna get me? And I was like, oh my gosh.
Now is this person going to attack me on Twitter?
Yeah, right.
Can I write this and feel comfortable?
You just made me think maybe a good way to use DayDisc would be just 12 times 5 minutes away from other people. Just to get into a space where there just isn't somebody else for 5 minutes, 12 times a day would probably do us all a world of good.
Or maybe choosing to put your phone in another room when you realize that you're attached and tethered to it so
definitely.
closely.
We've talked about this one has come up a lot. The put the phone down for 5 minutes rule is something that DayDisc would be really, really good for. We found we came across a word which it peaked a couple of years ago in 2019. But the word was tequilibrium. And it was in the business enterprise space that staff were getting digital fatigue because they couldn't find equilibrium because they were being sold too many new apps and platforms and systems and the Slacks and the Meets and the Zooms and everything, and the companies themselves were being urged to find a equilibrium that was going to future-proof them and their staff and allow some kind of degree of stability in this turbulent market full of digital crap mostly, right? So this equilibrium was a concept for companies and and it's actually one that we can really bring home. It's equilibrium. Everybody, you need to find it. If you've been I've played the VR, what's it called? The games in VR.
Yeah.
And you can't stay in too long. You have to come out.
Because you'll be stuck forever.
Yeah. So I really like this idea of equilibrium, and as you say, just this balance between putting down a phone and touching the DayDisc is a form of equilibrium. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned certain spiritual aspects and philosophical aspects that you apply to DayDisc. I wonder how much of that was something that you had applied to DayDisc from the get-go, from the inception of the idea, and how much of that was discovery over the course of the product development and going down all of these rabbit holes in developing the product?
No, it was pretty much all discovery. This was a self-suggesting phenomenon at every step of the way. Yeah. It was really, really crazy. So, for example, a good example of this would be the DayDisc. It turns out you have two chakras in your chest. Not everybody knows about the Hrit chakra, which is off to one side. So you have the heart chakra in the center on the meridian axis, and then you have the Hrit chakra. And DayDisc sort of sits you could say, between the two as you move around. And anyway, it turns out that the Hrit chakra is the seat of the inner wish-fulfilling tree. And so there's a strong connection there with manifestation and making intention reality, and which is very much what DayDisc is all about, right? I want something, I need to take steps, and it's going to work. And then learning more about the getting really into the fine detail of the concept of karma and dharma, and being able to say that actually, yeah, conceptually, DayDisc transforms karma into dharma. Karma is action, and dharma is the right life or living the right way, and that's what this little thing is doing. And I didn't know any of these things, and I discovered it, and I discovered that it couldn't be any other way. And like I said, this thing about my name, Cartwright, meaning like wheel maker, that came right at the very end of the process.
And there was also a connection on the Kickstarter that you had written about Tao.
Yeah. In Chinese mysticism, they obviously instead of prana, their central concept is qi. And in the West, we spell it with QI or sometimes with the CHI. And the qi. And it turned out that looking into how they understand qi and the way it flows and the way it can be concentrated, the way it can exist outside of the body, the way it turned out that actually it turned out to be a really coherent and logical way of looking at the DayDisc and its function too. So the DayDisc is a little chi kind of concentrator. It's like a little chi focus engine, a chi ratchet kind of, and it's kind of going to promote chi flow from the external environment into your torso, into your being. And again, I was interested in chi from a long time ago, and I did judo, but there's not much overlap. But so I had come across these notions of like the Eastern notions of physicality and subtle energy, but I didn't realize that that DayDisc. And then the magnetism side of things. So you can go into the Ayurveda of magnets. You can go into the Eastern, the ancient Chinese magnetism, and they were on it like 3,500 years ago. They knew.
You mentioned that they had the original compass with magnets.
It was a chariot. They called it like the chariot of the south wind. I was interested to find that for them the original compass doesn't point north, or they don't have that. We think that a compass points north, and for them, no, it was a south pointing compass.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. And what was the work like with the magnets as far as just getting them to function right?
There's magnets. They're everywhere in my workspace. Right? They go everywhere. They stick to everything. Well, not everything. They stick to very specific things, but they will stick to all of those specific things. So, working with magnets, you use a lot of wooden little chopsticks, wooden little pincers and things, because you can't use tweezers. You can't use anything to get stuck. And that was a whole rabbit hole in itself. Turns out nobody understands magnets. It turns out like you can go to Nikola Tesla and read some like cryptic remarks about how profound and like weird they are. And then modern science is like, magnets, there's like fields. And it turns out, but nobody knows what a field is, and nobody can explain quite. And so there's a whole corner of the internet where all these sort of lunatic fringe people are doing backyard, garage science with magnets, and that's a really cool place to hang out.
Yeah. Were there any favorite takeaways from hanging out in those?
Oh, definitely.
Those circles?
So people have invented. You've heard of ferrofluid, which is a magnetic particles in a kind of oily fluid. And then when you bring a magnet towards it, the fluid itself reacts in 3D to the field of the magnet. So that's a cool effect. But that's not even the start of it. People have invented a device called a Ferrous Cell, which seems to be showing the magnetic field lines in ways that they haven't been visualized before. And so it's quite a simple thing, just two little pieces of glass with some of this ferrofluid in between, and you place a magnet on top of it, and the fields are visible and you can see these if you know the flower of life, or torus geometry, this Ferrous Cell will show up the torus geometry of all these magnets.
Oh wow! How do you spell that? Ferris wheel?
Ferrocell.
Okay.
And it's not an arms race. That's the wrong word out there. It's the Wild West. People are building bigger, not bigger, better ones, but better ones. People are innovating on the basic idea. You have 3D ferrous cells now. You have spherical ferrous cells now. It's like I say, it's a fun place to hang out.
Yeah, and there's also some understanding that magnets may have some impact on our health. So is that an area where you did any research or acquired any knowledge?
This is controversial because any kind of health claim is I need to be careful. We're not making any health claims for DayDisc. It's a habit tracker and it works in that domain. But if you do your own research, it does turn out that static magnetic fields, which is what we're using, do promote local microcirculation.
Interesting.
So to have
that might be another reason why this is
quite strong static magnets by your heart promoting microcirculation, I suspect is probably not a bad thing.
And there's actually a lot of products with magnets and magnetized necklaces in Japan. So maybe that's another potential area where
and it was a big thing among athletes. They had the little magnetic athletic band. I don't think I've ever seen, well, we did do a lot of research. I didn't see any negative reports on magnetism and the human body at all. I have seen some absolutely shocking new results. Did you see yesterday that a magnetic protein has been substituted for a regular protein in mice, I think, and they can now control the behavior of these mice by applying an external magnetic field?
That's frightening.
Yeah. This is the cutting edge science, apparently. So we used to have a regular protein, and now they put a magnetic protein. And so just by changing the fields, they can activate this protein. I think what they did was they made the mice feel good in the presence of a magnetic field.
They did that in what way? How did they make them feel good?
These mice who were transgenic, they were given a new. They expressed a protein in their brain in the pleasure circuit. We were talking about the dopamine loop.
Right.
I think this was one of these proteins in that circuit.
Okay, so specifically in the brain. No problem.
Anyway, so it's the circuit in the brain, and the channels, the gates are opened by the switch is switched by the magnetic field. So these little ion channels deep in the mouse's brain are no longer under the mouse's biological control. They're gonna flip open under the effect of the field.
Oh wow! So it's quite literally mechanically in their brain flipping a switch.
It's going to be our brains next.
I hope not. I'm not going to sign up for that one.
I did learn about some more cool magnetic experiments in the body modification community. Maybe you know some people have horns, people have tongue, and all these kind of people are doing some crazy stuff now. And one of their long-term goals was magnetic implants. And the basic idea was, wouldn't it be cool to pick up my keys or like whatever with my finger? And I can't remember his name, and maybe we can look him up. But he was a guy. He did experiments, and he fit the magnet under his index finger, and he was going around picking up. So the idea was picking up things with the magnet, and that never worked because the cells in the tissue in the finger was getting squeezed, and it was going. They're getting necrosis of the finger between. The pinch was too strong. And so he realized that he was going to have to go with a much weaker magnet. Very, very, very weak. Not strong enough to pick things up, but strong enough to twitch in electromagnetic fields. So he's now got it wrapped in silicone, implanted under his fourth finger. And this guy can now feel in a wall, say, where the wires are running.
Oh, wow. You don't need a stud finder anymore.
Exactly. He can tell, apparently, resting his hand on an American versus a European TV, because they're at 50 and 60 hertz. and he can feel the difference in the vibration in his finger.
That's really fascinating. And
that's the
some
kind
of the oldest
I wouldn't have it
technology.
implanted in my brain genetically, but I would maybe consider having it implanted in my finger.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the questions I have, and I mean, I think this is a good pivot point to this question, is what does balance with technology look like as it continues to invade various aspects of our lives? And I guess I would say digital technology. So what does our balance with digital technology look like?
Over, and there is none, and it will never come back. I think people are going to have to fight tooth and nail and make absolutely radically profound lifestyle choices if they want to live in the future with what do we call it, technological balance. Years ago, I was reading Ray Kurzweil, Singularity, and the AI, and it's all happening so fast, so and it's all real, big data. It's all the Moore's law, the quantum computing, I could almost call it Skynet. It's not. It's the Starlink. 5G. It's going to be completely inescapable. I mean, it already is. So that's I think yours is the most important question. It's this transhumanist question: is there any balance in a transhumanist future, or is it a one way deal where the technology is going to subsume the humanity more and more and more and more? Yeah, I don't know, Kevin. A balance.
I mean,
so many notifications. Even if you turn your notifications off, that they'll wait for you, or they'll get you, or.
Yeah, I can't unsubscribe from enough emails, and they still find their way to me from different avenues. And there's constantly things grabbing for my attention. And yeah, I definitely have some sort of technological fatigue, always being on. It's not just, work is one thing. I've become an ever more efficient machine as a cog in the wheel. But then even in your personal life, you're constantly being drawn in, and it takes a great deal of effort to focus my attention on what makes me and what makes me most interested in what I'm most interested in, and not what's poking for my attention for me to, at least feign interest or say, hey, maybe that is interesting. But I see revisiting analog technologies and, thinking about how we can bring the past back to the future as one potential way to create more balance in our own personal lives. And then hopefully that resonates out into society and civilization. If enough individuals do things like wear DayDisc and take a moment to disconnect from, all of the technology and all of the digital technology that's grabbing and vying for our attention, and instead project your energy on something like yourself. And
it doesn't have to be yourself. We remember books. Right?
Yeah.
You didn't need any connection. Oh, how's the Wi-Fi? Oh, what's the password? No. It's like, oh, which page was I at? Damn. We had analog technologies for distracting us and for entertaining us and and I think the big shift is that we get everything in bite size now. Everything is so atomic. Our attention is so fragmented. It's so hard to pay attention for long term to things that, like, we used to be able to. I remember reading Lord of the Rings, teenager, and I was like, oh, I have to go for dinner? No, I'm fine. And now, okay, so now people do it with video games and stuff, but the video games are on a shorter loop. It's like, respawn, it's new level, it's level up, it's there's less of this self-paced.
Self-paced. I like that concept.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel very blessed to have been. I think I was my people my age must be the last generation to have grown up without a smartphone. I didn't get my
right. You said you're 30, 35?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. So I feel the same. I feel oddly connected and oddly disconnected that we grew up with the technology. We saw the evolution of computers and the internet and what it was then with dial-up to what it is now. And I feel some connection to it, but also a little bit disturbed and like I don't understand anymore. And I want to keep up because it's the way that society is evolving. But at the same time, I don't relate to it the way that I once did because it's gone kind of beyond me. It's evolved quicker than I could adapt to it, I think. And it's
and we're all in this huge dilemma together. I mean, it's a very strange feeling, this accelerationism.
Yeah. And generations today are born into it, so they understand it. But if things are progressing as quickly as I think they are, a kid born today is going to be in a position similar to the position we're in when they become adults, that they're constantly aged out of being able to participate in a meaningful way and understand in what they're participating in.
Yeah, I think there have been some watershed moments. Like I think we're going through one now with like algorithmic content curation. When the bot, the AI is deciding for people what they might like to know or watch or listen to or care about. Discovery has gone away. Yeah, people are being served. And that's a huge disconnect from how people used to acquire information. You used to like, I like the look of this magazine, not so much this one. I'll flick through this, that's not for me. Whereas now people have a feed and the bot is just squirting algorithmically selected stuff at people. And people, again, have to make a very conscious choice to go elsewhere. And that didn't happen before. And another one is knowing where everybody is all the time or getting hold of people. Do you remember when do you remember when we were teens and that your date didn't show up or something? You're like, oh, well, I have no idea now if she ever will, where she is, what I'm going to do now.
Maybe I'll go to a payphone and call her.
yeah. Or maybe I'll
walk
can't remember her number.
To a payphone.
Yeah. And these new generations, they will never have that sense of it's a strange. Do you follow the Philip Pullman series? You know, the Northern Lights and the
No.
It's a parallel universe trilogy where everybody has a demon, and so everybody's soul is split into the soul in the body, and an external, it takes the form of an animal, and they can have chit chats with them, and so they're never alone. And that's what these Gen X, these new, I don't know what they're called. What are they called? New Gen.
I don't even know.
The new gen is never alone. The new gen, it doesn't actually know how to be alone because there's always some connection.
Yeah. And I think I had that a little bit growing up too, though. You know, I had AOL Instant Messenger and I had FOMO, fear of missing out. I didn't want to log off and miss a chance to talk to the girl I was crushing on or, things like that. But it becomes really debilitating to feel the need to always be connected.
Yeah, and then the highest level, we the West, we the companies, we the corporations, we the capitalists, we're exporting this way of life to people that are just going to have to buy it. Shut up and buy it. it's a strange time. You know, it's a strange time where the at the highest level, people seem to think that this is a deterministic kind of, oh yes, nature wants to be technological. The cosmos wants to process information faster and faster. Silicon is a natural evolution. We should integrate. The AI will be greater and better than we will, and we should be pumping more billions into doing this. And yes, absolutely. And on the other hand, people are like, well, we did perfectly fine for like hundreds of thousands of years.
It goes back again to rediscovering old ways of doing things. And I wonder if there's not going to be, speaking specifically to the spiritual aspect of your project and the wellness aspect of your project and renewed interest in spirituality and wellness in general. I wonder if that's going to be a driving force that helps us kind of reach into the past to connect with those things and help us achieve some sort of balance despite.
Are you talking about the age of Aquarius?
Not specifically, no.
Because that's starting now. I do think that according to the big cosmic clocks and the prophecies, there is a shift.
Is there? What is the age of Aquarius? I think I only know it from a rock song.
The cosmic horizon is divided into the zodiac, the 12 constellations. And on a 26,500 year cycle, the axis of the Earth proceeds. There's a precession, and the Earth will point. I'm loosely saying it here. Will point for a period at a different constellation. So over the course of 26,500 years, the Earth will trace out the entire zodiac, and so we've just come out of the age of Pisces. And in the esoteric tradition, the reason Jesus is associated with this fish symbol, Ichthus, you've seen it on bumper stickers and stuff, is because Jesus is really the prophet of the age of Pisces. And so for 2,000 years, roughly, the Earth was in the age of Pisces. And the next age along is the age of Aquarius. And so it's something that the ancients knew, a way to mark very long counts.
Periods of time.
We've heard about the Maya calendar and the way that it resets. It gets 2012 and it resets. It doesn't really reset. It kind of rolls over. And so they have counts within counts within counts. And they use years. And
I lost you on the Mayan calendar. We cut out.
Just to say that these is the ancients always used to have very long counts that were always pegged to cosmic phenomena, and the longest phenomenon that they could track was this great year, this precession of the and I think I'm right in saying there's a line in the Bible somewhere where when somebody asks Jesus, when are you coming back? When should we expect your next coming? And he says, look to the water bearer, and that's Aquarius. And in the 70s, I think it's the 70s, the hippie movement with the indigo children, the peace and love. They were jumping the gun a little bit on the age of Aquarius. So it is a very slow shift from Pisces into Aquarius. There's no like day, and there's not a specific calendar day.
Yeah. But you were saying there's no specific day when the shift occurs.
So the hippies were heralding the birth of this new age. They knew it was coming. Astrologically, it's inevitable. Astrologically, it's just what happens next. But the meaning of it, and then the Indians divide time into yugas. We would call them eons or eras. And according to the Vedic calendar, also there is an era just ending. The Kali Yuga, the Yuga of destruction, is ending, and it's to be followed by a creative Yuga.
Wow. Yeah, just letting that settle in. I mean, considering all of the creativity that's born out of era of abundance and era of destruction, it's yeah, that's very interesting to consider the implications for that.
Yeah, we have so much. You're right. You're right to think of just how much creativity we have, and to be pondering how much of it is well spent and how much of it is maybe wasted creativity or creativity misspent.
Right. Yeah. Destructive or otherwise
Like, how many
not
Flappy
productive.
Bird knockoffs does reality really need? You know, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this podcast is the essence of it is to think about and ponder creativity and creative minds and process and stuff. And since I started it, I've heard more and more about, what people are predicting for the future, how, there is some degree of abundance and automation of basically everything, and epic levels of job loss in areas where people thought that they would always have security, from truck drivers to telemarketers to every layer of society, white collar and blue collar jobs alike are being taken away. And there is this more general concept out there that it's going to open up a sort of renaissance for creativity and self-expression. And yeah, that seems to really resonate with what you shared about the age of Aquarius.
Yeah, I think I do agree in a lot of ways. I think there's so many dangerous trends though for creatives. Like, we used to keep our software native to our computer. Cloud-based apps on a subscription service. Our files are not in our computer anymore. Our files are on a server somewhere. There are so many more liabilities, dependencies, so many more forced relations now than there used to be. People, yeah. So the tools are powerful, but they're also,
well, it's building a layer of dependence so that your creativity, to some degree. I mean, if I want to make something in Adobe Illustrator, I have to have a subscription and inevitably have internet connection. And that was something that, I mean, in our lifetimes, we saw the transition of that market from, like you said, locally housed software that you can have as long as your computer survived. But yeah, I guess even back then there was some concept of forced obsolescence of the device and the software itself. But that's taken on new meaning that it's in the cloud, and you have to pay a monthly fee to even use it.
And then to come back to my perspective as an archaeologist on all of these things, it's all the question is, you create things, how long are they going to be around for? Are they going to be readable? Are future people going to be able to extract any information from them? These media that we're depending on now, I mean, I know that the biggest companies back up everything onto tape. Did you know this?
I worked at a company who I worked at Fujifilm, which was for a while, and they they made some of the most impressive archival film that companies would back their stuff up onto for archival purposes. Yeah,
and these companies are paying top dollar for access to this archival system. And if your ISP or your cloud or Dropbox or whoever is not paying top dollar, and there's so much volatility. All these digital data files are so ephemeral. They can be gone, in just, I've deleted things and I know that I'll never get them back. So when whole servers go down, people are going to lose incalculable amounts of creativity is going to go up in smoke unless these systems become more resilient. And the hackers attacking these databases and these things, it's
yeah, and by nature, I think collectively having all of your riches in one bank puts the riches of the world at risk. You know, if you have a storehouse and you're storing all of this country's grain in one silo, and that one silo burns down or is otherwise adulterated and compromised, you'll lose sustenance for, however long that was supposed to allow you to survive. So it is an interesting concept that we all have our most cherished memories, the projects that we've spent the most hours developing and writing, all on the internet, in the cloud. And if that's compromised, then it could all go up in a poof of smoke, kind of. So if you're listening to this, print out your manuscript now and make sure you store it in a fireproof safe.
Yeah, or like what is he called, Joseph Smith on the gold plates? Chisel it into gold plates. Get serious. So like if you're Thoth, right, chisel it into emerald tablets, bury it 70 meters under the Sphinx, and make sure that it's indestructible. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's so strange. Writing was invented as digital systems. Writing was invented as a kind of record keeping technology. And their first one was indestructible, was everlasting. We still find the Sumerian clay tablets that they shatter. You can put them back together, but you can still read them 6,000 years later.
Right.
Shep owes so and so like 6 bushels of like wheat and like 3 cows. It says. No data was lost.
Yeah. If they had the option back then to store it digitally, you think they would think better of it?
Yeah.
Do you think that was their
Library
intention?
of Alexandria? Imagine if we still had that. Yeah, things burned. But so archival tech is since, as you say, since we're in the most creative period of human history, I'm not saying by the law of numbers, right? There are more people being creative than ever before.
Not necessarily quality, but definitely quantity.
Right. And that's the question. Now that there are all these people making stuff, how do we find the quality? Like bands. Band music search discovery has become so hard.
Yeah, it does.
Because if you don't trust the algorithm, so the algorithm says, oh, loads of people are listening to this, you're going to like this. Well, my taste is not quite like loads of people's taste. And so
yeah, but would you rather have it back like when we were growing up, where a good portion of what slipped through the cracks was directed by record executives? Just to play devil's advocate a little bit.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's a point. That's a more general point about publication and about how the gatekeepers control every single science, novels, magazines, newspapers. Yet the gatekeepers have always controlled the publication technologies. What gets through is what pleases the gatekeepers. But there was less music. There were fewer albums out. There were fewer big bands. There were fewer bands. It was easier to think that you weren't missing out on some really talented that you might really love. Whereas now, where are they? How do we find them?
Yeah, and it's such a mountain to sort through that you do rely and you need the algorithms to some degree. And my strategy is, okay, I know the algorithm's going to suggest me stuff. Let me really try to train it as best as I can and not have it train me. So I'll go into I know an artist I like, I'll look at similar artists, I'll preview all of them, and then if I find one I like, I'll listen to a lot of that one and look at similar artists to that artist. So,
And what will you do if you have no signal? Because you won't have the file on your phone, right? You won't be able to. If you still got
yeah,
MP3s.
yeah, vinyl.
Yeah,
Vinyl is a disc.
This question, this tequilibrium question. So I want to disconnect from too many Spotify accounts, too many Alexas, too many whatnot. Oh, well, nobody's selling CDs anymore, and I can't get. I don't know how people are going to find equilibrium. I think it's no.
Yeah. So essentially, I think the heart of what you're getting at is you don't have, if you want to listen to music, you don't have an option other than to subscribe to some digital service or find it via a digital platform, because I mean, if you want to listen to a song, you can't go to a store and buy the CD and own something physical of it. It just exists in a digital space.
Well, it's funny because I don't know when it happened, but people stopped talking about piracy, right? I mean, music was free, let's be honest, to us growing up. All the music, all of it.
And really, free. Yeah. And I had a lot of discovery during that time of bands I wouldn't have otherwise discovered. Bands I still listen to today. Yeah.
But I don't know who's still pirating. I don't know whether that's still because the subscriptions are sort of there and they make it look easy, and they have the algorithm. I don't know if people do still pirate, but that's a good example of a time when you invest your own effort and you do your own discovery versus just buying into whatever the app system sort of channels you, the behavior patterns that the app system channels you into. Mm-hmm. But also, books is the real one for me. I think we used to spend hours. We used to be able to spend hours. We people used to be able to spend hours in a book. And I don't see kids these days being able to spend hours in anything if it's not.
I mean, I'll admit it's hard for me. I mean, and I was never a very focused reader myself, but there were times where I would get into a book and just read it all day and finish it in a few days. And I try to do that now, and my attention, like you said, it's fragmented, and it's hard even when I'm reading to be immersed and to have, and not just reading, even I love movies, I love film. And even when I'm watching a movie, part of my brain at times is not watching that movie. And it's a very special moment. And there's some magic that I need to find to get immersed and find the level of immersion I used to love so much. And I'm trying to find that magic cocktail of getting myself in the mood and, calming down my mind to the point where I can have full immersion into a movie anymore. But it's hard. There's so many distractions.
Yeah. If I didn't have airplane mode, I would go crazy in this day and age. And airplane mode I would recommend it to everybody. Just stick it on, and you don't lose anything and you gain a lot.
Yeah.
Everything's still waiting for you when you come back.
Yep. Yeah. You'll turn it on and you'll get all those notifications at once, like an avalanche.
I don't really understand what all the rigorous academic anthropologists are doing. I think, it's quite so clear that the mind is, that the social, that the human is at the end of its ability to integrate these new information streams, trust in media, trust in information validity, this scientificization, datification of everything. People are at the edge of their natural ability to be balanced psychically, internally, and the academics are not leading us towards a solution. There's not very much philosophy or theory or even psychology on calm, or yeah, there's a gap.
Right. Yeah. And I suppose that's one reason why so many people are rediscovering or exploring spirituality and wellness. And yeah, because that's the only place to turn to, really. And it's funny because, I work a day job, and when I'm not podcasting, surprise, surprise to listeners out there. No, I've said it a few times.
Not for long. Don't worry, Kevin. It's going to be
okay. But I oftentimes describe my mind in and out of work in computing terms. Like, I need to decompress, defragment, and that takes a long time at the end of a long week on Friday night. And sometimes it takes more than a day because I've been taking on, so much. And then during the week itself, I'll have to say to my boss or somebody else that I don't have any more bandwidth. And it's true. And it's, people are being pushed by, technology has made life and made us so darn efficient. Now, I could, when I was working a previous job, I automated, and I'm not very good at Excel. I'm not really good at writing formulas. And still, yet I was able to automate the job of what I was supposed to be computing on a quarterly basis, something like that. And I just saw in that somebody with a very low ability to program like me being able to automate a function of my job was kind of profound for me in terms of realizing that, I'm wearing technically a white collar at this job, and I could see a computer. I made a computer do what I'm doing.
Are you one of the people who told your boss, or you didn't tell your boss that you'd automated part of your job?
I told him when I left. But yeah, and I think, now I have so many different streams of information that cut out various middlemen on the way that I'm able to do my current job in quite a efficient manner. Communication with others is extremely efficient. And a lot of times I find that it's really the organizational structure, not the technology, that's holding them back from finding further efficiencies. But at some point, like you said, I hit a point where I can't do any more with my own brain, despite the technology being hyper efficient. I could only engage with one technology at a time. And it's something that I think about pretty frequently. Like, how efficient am I supposed to be? And even if the things around me and the tools that I'm using become even more efficient than they are now, will I be able to employ them because I have limitations as a human? And should I feel bad about those limitations, that I'm essentially not a computer and not programmable to the point of turning off my need to go to the bathroom or something like that?
You make me think of an Indian mathematical technique. Well, it's not just Indian, but have you heard of the abacus?
Yes, yeah. I was thinking about abacus.
You've been to Japan. You know the soroban.
The soroban?
It's got instead of horizontal, the beads being horizontally mounted, they're vertically mounted.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, and it's very small. It's a little sort of hand manual little device.
Right.
And you said you're not a computer, you can't program yourself, but I knew somebody who was an instructor in the soroban mathematics technique, and she was able to take little kids, 5, 6 years old, teach them to use this number symbol manipulation tool. And very quickly, these kids, 6, 7, 8 years old, were able to perform literally computations. You could say, I used to say to the kids, what's 47865 times 39284? And the kid would go, and then go 67423675566, and I'd check it on my phone and it would be correct. right?
Wow.
Yeah. And so this is an ancient technique. They had mind hacks, productivity. I mean, if it would take me so long by hand to do that thing, and with this
Mm.
soroban, with this mental technique, the kid is not even thinking the result. The kid is reading the results algorithmically off of the device. Right. And so there is no error possible because it's a computation, and it's a prosthetically assisted computation, and this thing is thousands and thousands of years old. And so in the Vedic text, when they talk about people computing like astronomical orbits of like the moon and they were doing it in their heads, and they were doing it because they had hacks which we've lost access to. Another one is the memory palace technique. Have you heard of this?
Is that what people who win memory competitions, essentially one of the techniques they use
Right,
to
it's another
create
technique.
references to
you create a spatial structure in your mind, and then you put information in places around the spatial structure. And if you remember where you put it, you can go there and you can find the information. And I learned recently that the little kid monks that get accepted into sort of Tibetan Buddhist monasteries, they don't get taught any content. They don't get taught anything, any knowledge for the first few years. They get taught technique. They get taught the mental technique of the memory palace. They get taught how they're going to have to think later on. And then when the techniques and when the mental structures are in place, then they are taught what to think. And so, you know, these questions, how efficient can we be? I think mankind has been trying to answer this question all along. Mankind is the smart animal, right? And he's been smart all along. And some of these mental hacks, the Odyssey and the Iliad that used to get told orally, you know, one guy recites the story over 7 days, and he does not miss a beat, and he does not miss a rhyme, and he does not miss a word. You know, we can. There's another one. We had in English history. There's a little guy called the Black Prince, and he was I don't know. He's somebody's son. He's like something the third or the fourth or something like this. Edward, I can't remember. He's the Black Prince, and he was 14, and he led the British armies in the 100 Years' War at some point or something like this. 14, and all the grizzled old veterans of all the following this 14-year-old kid who's making tactical, strategic, military leading. Or in the Middle Ages, kids used to go to Oxford and Cambridge, ages like 10, 12, 11, having already read all the classics in Greek and Latin, sometimes in Aramaic as well, and these were young kids, and they were fully educated in a way. They were multilingual, and I don't think we come close to scratching the surface of what our potential is, but I do think that the technology threatens to undermine our ability to rely on, to rediscover, and to expect ourselves to be able to excel in some of these things.
Yeah, like some sort of atrophy, if you're not
using
I
can still remember phone numbers from people, my friends from when we were kids.
Yeah.
But I don't know my fiance's phone number now. It's just saved in my phone.
Right.
It's things we don't choose to remember anymore because I can just look it up. Yeah.
So I guess the argument would be that frees up some memory space or some bandwidth for your, to use your mind in a different way, to remember something different or to achieve some other purpose with the limited bandwidth in your mind. So do you think there is a value that we're losing by not remembering the phone numbers? Is it a simple exercise of just exercising memory that we're losing? Like, I wonder your thoughts on that.
I think it's a big experiment, and that a really wise society that worked on the precautionary principle would have tested, high-tech screens, touch screens on a subpopulation to find out, what is this going to do to their minds in the broadest sense, to their souls, to their thinking ability, to their cognitive abilities? We just don't know.
Yeah, reverting back to your story about the Tibetan monks and the boys who come in training, and essentially they're first taught how to think, not what to think, or how to construct their mind space before they fill it with knowledge. And I wonder if we're being thrown new tools, digital, tools every day, and we never think about how to best employ them. And maybe there is a chance to use them in a very a way that enhances what it means to be human, and enhances our power and our full.
I love your optimistic streak. Yeah,
it's not typical. Don't get used to it. No, but
I do agree with you. But people are going to have to think really, really hard, and just taking these things which are produced with a profit motive, face value, and relying on them too much is going to sabotage people's selves.
Yeah, I would sprinkle the pessimism on there that we're being bombarded with it so quickly that we cannot adapt in that way, because we're told to use something before we know how to use it to best leverage.
But that's the original technical definition of the singularity. So the black hole, the singularity, the technological singularity is by analogy with the black hole. And the black hole is the point where the curvature of space-time is too severe and the light cannot escape. It's a divergence with two values. And by analogy here, the rate of change in the technosphere is faster than the rate of, when it becomes faster than the rate of change that mankind can handle, then you've got the disconnect. That is the singularity. And I think when I read the book in years ago, it was due for 2035, and I think it's coming on. We're kind of in it. We're living this singularity.
Yeah, I never realized that was actually the actual technical definition, because that's exactly what I'm describing. Is essentially I'm not able to keep up to.
Yeah, I'm not able to into the black hole of the future, literally.
Yeah, which is just a whole bunch of useless apps, as it turns out.
Well, no, hopefully it's cool. Hopefully it's like Dyson spheres and like lunar colonies and spiritual enlightenment and, transmutation, levitation, all the cool secret technologies they've got locked up.
It brings me back to, I wanted to ask the question, so what keeps us tethered here and to reality? And another question I had, and I kind of touched on it before, but I did want to dive in a little bit deeper, since you are an anthropologist and archaeologist, is what is with our attachment to physical things? I think I asked the question before, but I think we could explore it a little bit more from the perspective of digitization and wanting to be tethered to reality and holding on to something physical, which is, something like your product.
I think precious things used to have to be carried to us from far away, and then had to be processed by skilled craftsmen, and then they had to be given as special gifts at ceremonies, or inherited as heirloom objects, and now I'll stay away from these modern digital things, but craft. I think things became precious in proportion to the craft that went into them, and to the sort of rarity value of the material constituents of it. I guess the amber up amber trading route where the ancient Greeks used to get the amber from the Baltic, and they used to get really upset when a bad winter would shut down the trading route because they needed their amber to make bracelets to give to their wives. And
the concept of, connection to our ancestors through items is an interesting facet of it. And then by virtue of connection to the past, connection to ourselves and our place in the present. It's a fascinating one to, I think, just ponder. And
little things like even things are changing so fast. When you had the first iPod, I never had one, but I know that it was quite normal to have it engraved. It was an option, and a lot of people had a birth date or some kind of message engraved. And even that now, people are not having their iPhones or their smartphones. It would be so trivial to have a little laser to engrave some kind of personalization, and it's not happening. The personalization is a layer. It's a mask, silicon. What are they called? What are they called? The thingies?
Case.
The case, yeah. There's no sense of making the object itself special. You can just stick a sticker on it, put a layer on it, because don't get attached because it's trash anyway in like a few years. Yeah. The only good news really is that in the future, people are going to be able to mine our trash, and it's going to be really easy for them to extract all the precious materials.
Because we already concentrated it for them.
Yeah. I like to think of in the future they'll be able to recover working microchips and stuff, and
we got one that worked. Do you have the machine to read this one? Can we reverse engineer it?
But what do we invest in these days? I don't know. I had a penknife that I really loved, and then I lost it.
Doesn't it suck when you find an item?
It's for cutting, and it's really.
I have my dad got me this. It's a Swiss Army knife.
Oh, cool!
And it has a Japanese doll attached to it, and basically, I could cut boxes and cut open tape or anything with it, and it fits in my what I guess used to be a watch pocket in my jeans. The little pocket on the top of the
the little condom pocket. I thought it was for condoms. No, really, seriously, that's a watch pocket.
That's what I've heard. Yeah, recently that it was originally for
mystery solved. Thanks,
originally
Kevin.
for a pocket watch, so that you can easily find it. You didn't have to dig into your deep pocket. You could quickly pull it out, and it was right next to one of the belt loops, so you could attach it there.
Actually, that reminds me. One other aspect about the design of the DayDisc is that, like nurses' watches that clip onto the breast pocket and which are read upside down. Right. So from the nurse's perspective, she looks down and she can read it, but from the patient, it looks like it's upside down. And so awesome. The DayDisc hangs around your neck. We needed the dial to be readable from upside down, and so it's all these little.
I didn't know that about nurses.
Yeah,
that's awesome. Did you do much more research into timepieces? And one aspect that we haven't talked about quite as much is time. And let's see, I have so many notes written here, and they're really just all over this place. One of the quotes I think from the Kickstarter was "Spend time wisely." So on that note, did you go down a rabbit hole of timepieces and looking into clocks and watchmaking and things like that?
Well, yeah, but bigger timepieces than clocks and watches. It's again back to the archaeology. I mean, in the sense that Stonehenge is a timepiece. The pyramids, the Sphinx, basically anything that the ancients used to build was a timepiece. the obelisk in the square, the shadow of that. It's a big sundial, and when the shadow falls on this temple, then they do this right and they do that right. Yeah, I learned loads of cool things about timepieces. Actually, did you know that they had incense clocks?
Incense clocks.
Yes, so it's a stick of incense that has different smell along its length. So it's carefully made, and so as you I don't know, you're meditating and you can say, oh, time is passing. Yeah, lots of water clocks in the. I did discover this incredible device. Have you heard of the Antikythera Mechanism?
No.
No, so it's a computer. Actually, they say it's a computer. It's a mess of copper gears, brass gears, found from a shipwreck somewhere near Greece. And this thing is maybe 2,300 years old, maybe about 2,000 years old. And it had a handle, you wound it, you cranked it, and it had about 76 different gears, and it would indicate when the Olympics were, when the lunar eclipse was, when what day of the week it was. Bob's your uncle. It was your little kind of smart little cabinet thing. It was maybe like 2 feet tall. It was the peak of what they had 2,000 years ago, and that thing is incredible. I really recommend you and your audience go and look it up. It's called the Antikythera Mechanism, and nothing like it was built again until the mechanical clocks in Europe in the 16th century.
Wow.
So this thing is so far ahead of its time, it's unreal. And there's a whole story of how, if you want to do a cool story, find out who made it and how. Nobody knows.
And they know this?
No, nobody knows.
Oh.
And it encodes so much ancient knowledge, so much astronomy, so much mathematics, so much technical information in the precision manufacturing of 76, I think it is, gears, and the mathematics of the ratios. It's an incredible piece of work. And these days they study it with X-rays and tomography machines, because the whole thing has been at the bottom of the sea for 2,000 years, and it's all glommed together.
Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, so this was a question about timepieces. So that's a cool timepiece. It wasn't central. DayDisc is not really a clock. It is about using time, but DayDisc is definitely not a clock. Time is a psychological phenomenon, because sometimes it goes faster and sometimes it goes really slow, and it's really down to us to be volitional about what we do with our time.
Yeah, I like that, because I think when I encountered DayDisc and I was reading all that you had written on the Kickstarter, and I encountered this spend time wisely, sometimes that's actually a pain point for me, because I so badly want to spend all my time wisely that I spend my time stressing about spending my time wisely and not actually using it wisely. And I think that's a perfect way to frame, for users like me who may stress about using it right and may stress about using your time right, that to return back to center and realize that you can use time at your own pace and your own leisure. And that is something that I need reminding of from time to time. And I think something, like DayDisc could do that for me.
You can. And then another good example of how difficult it is to use all our time with our own leisure is, I don't know if you have it in America, the daylight saving time.
We do, yeah. Do you guys have it?
Just when everybody's getting comfortable with like the clock, and they're like, oh yeah, no, no,
wake up earlier.
And do you remember, and for people who are like our age, do you remember when it didn't used to be automatic? You have to go around and like change every clock. And now it's automatic, and you don't know if it is. You're like, did it do it? Did it do it? Am I up to date? Is it automatic now?
Or you don't even realize that it's daylight savings time, and that you lost an hour of sleep, and you just wake up and you're wondering why am I so freaking tired? And then you realize, oh, it was daylight savings time. My phone automatically shaved an hour out of my life.
Yeah, some big high level bureaucratic decision was made about time in your life. Yeah. I read about a guy. Have you read James? Have you heard of James Gleick, the guy who wrote Chaos?
No.
He's an American journalist. I think he won the Pulitzer Prize or won some kind of prize for that book. But he talked about the discovery of chaos theory, and it was all involved in Los Alamos and the creation of the Manhattan Project. They brought all these geniuses to collaborate, and one of these geniuses was so genius that he decided that 24 hours a day just wasn't enough for him. So he set himself on a 25-hour a day system. And his colleagues commented over time that, it was kind of weird that he would fall so over months and months and months of the project, the guy would be falling in and out of sync with everyone else as the extra hour made the difference.
Interesting. Was he ahead of them or behind them or falling asleep? I mean, was it a positive?
Well, he was on a different kind of cycle. So I think so on different periods he would line up more or less precisely with them when their mornings were, and he would drift. He was drifting relative to them.
I see. That's interesting. Yeah. So what is the future for you? I mean, as it pertains to DayDisc, and then as it pertains to, all of the really fascinating facets, all of, maybe I'll call them random areas that you possess a great deal of knowledge.
It's definitely going to be more products in the spirit of DayDisc. I think what you use the phrase something like going back to the past for the future or something like this. That's going to be the idea. I think if there is a market for people wanting to detect, then I would like to try and come up with more cool solutions for ways that they can detect. Not quite sure what they are yet, but product development was definitely the most fun part of making anything, of going from an idea to and ruling out bad ideas and finding out what doesn't work. And yeah, so I can't wait to get back to that. I mean, I'm really looking forward to DayDisc getting set up and promoting it, and looking forward to feedback from everybody. But getting back to product development is what I'm really excited about.
Yeah. Do you have any, I don't want you to spoil it, but do you have any areas in which you have specific interest or are developing ideas now?
Yeah,
as vaguely as you, as
actually,
ambiguously
I
as
think,
you want to be?
We don't drink water the right way. The ancients have quite a lot to say about how to store water, and about how to treat it, how not to treat it, and it's so primal that I think a lot of people will be interested in the kinds of solutions that we're looking into. Lots of copper. I'll just say that the Ayurvedics, they knew that copper is antimicrobial, and that if you leave water in a copper receptacle in sunlight, you get some really interesting effects on the electrochemistry of the water. So we're looking forward to coming up with something that people can bring into their homes that energizes their water.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's fascinating. I am so excited and happy that you are pursuing like all of these paths.
Thank you. I'm excited and happy that you're doing this. I mean, What's Your Random is such a cool concept, such a big myth for catching things with, right?
Yeah, I am a little bit scatterbrained, and so too is my interest. I have interest in basically everything. And, I realize that there is creativity that goes into everybody's lives, whether they think they're creative or not. And yeah, by exploring creativity, I could explore people and what they're passionate about and how they pursue that passion.
Cool. And you've got a really great way of drawing people out. I really appreciate your style.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah. And I guess we'll wrap up now, and you can point people to where they should go. Let us know when the campaign is ending, and if people listen to this after the campaign has ended, where they can follow up to find post Kickstarter updates and post Kickstarter places to get a DayDisc so that they can. Yeah,
guys, folks, the campaign runs till June the 1st. So you've got 13 days to come and grab a DayDisc at the early bird prices that you get on Kickstarter. That's where you'll find the most information, because it's all written up there. We've got video and lots of images, and you'll see how DayDisc looks in real life. After that, daydisc.com. We're pretty good on SEO. There's no other DayDisc, so you will find us. Just Google it. That's quite good.
And important to know.
That's about it. Kickstarter is, we're really grateful that Kickstarter exists, and the little ideas, little startups, little things like this can have somewhere to go, get tested and find an audience. So we're really grateful to Kickstarter for that too.
Yeah, and I would point out that it's DayDisc with a C, not a K.
Yes, DayDisc with a C, like the discus that they threw in the ancient Olympics. Correct.
Yeah, and if you are having trouble finding it on Kickstarter, sometimes the search function isn't great there. daydisc.com you're just one more click away from getting to the Kickstarter. So, Alex, thank you so much for your time and all of your insights and all of your knowledge. You are chalk yourself up as the first archaeologist on What's Your Random podcast. And I hope that you'll be the second too. I hope to have you back to talk about future projects. So please do keep us updated.
I'd love to hear more about your time in Japan and the interesting things that you've learned about creativity along the way.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity to come on and talk about DayDisc. Everybody, I hope you'll love it. If you're feeling the digital fatigue, then come check it out.
Yeah,
and
I love it already.
Last thing, please, may I just mention, it makes a great fidget toy. We've talked all about how deeply, kind of carefully thought out it is and how meaningful and everything. But basically, it makes a really great magnetic fidget toy, and it's almost unputdownable. So if you know anybody who's got like itchy fingers, then,
or if you are a person with itchy fingers yourself, like I am. Yeah. I'm in love with the product. I'm in love with the concept, and I'm in love with the depth that you went into in exploring the concept from all perspectives. So, yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you. It's really great to hear that. I hope everybody else is going to respond as positively too.
I think they will. All right, Alex, thank you again.
Cool.
And until next time, as I always say, enjoy your random.
Thanks. Have a great evening.
Well, thank you for hanging on to join me for this episode, our 32nd episode's debriefing after a conversation with Alex Cartwright, the wheel maker, the disc maker, the anthropologist, and product developer, kind of reaching into the past to bring novel products and concepts into the future. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. The key takeaway really for me today is the depth to which Alex explored this product in its development, the kind of feeling of destiny that, him finding a clockmaker's tool and just happening to play around with a magnet helped him conceive of an idea. It was really born out of those actions, and then those actions allowed him to go down the rabbit hole a little bit further to pull in different concepts relating to his experience as an anthropologist and his experience on this planet, spiritually and otherwise. I think there's a lot to be said for this product, and that's why it's been so successful so far on Kickstarter. Go check it out, just to, even if you aren't up to getting one yourself, I would check it out just to tie in the conversation that Alex and I had, to have a visual understanding of what he's presenting and how he's presenting it. I think he did a phenomenal job. I think it's one of those words you don't like to use too much, but genuine, kind of something that was really developed out of pure love for the process and the finished product. So thanks again to Alex for joining me, and until next time, enjoy the random.